Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview with another Jay Shetty Certification School graduate. I am really excited to welcome each and every one of you. And today we are having a very special guest, a very special graduate. We are having Stephen Toss. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time and everybody signing in today.
Of course, it's such a great pleasure. Stephen is specializing in career coaching, and he is now a certified Jay Shetty life and career coach. And Stephen actually was the graduate that have caused such a great amount of questions before we even went live. So today is going to be a very informative and very interesting session. If you have more questions for Stephen, make sure you drop them in the chat. We will try to make sure that we answer each and every one of them. Isn't it, Stephen?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
And I'm looking forward to diving right in with you into this interview, Stephen. Shall we begin with telling our audience a little bit of your story regarding how and when did you decide to become a coach?
Sure. I started thinking about this. I think I've really enjoyed helping people for a long time. It started when I was younger. I was always into sports. Did pretty good in a couple of sports and had a lot of friends and teammates would come to me and they would just ask advice. And a little bit after that, I got into fitness and was working out. And again, people started to come to me and ask for advice, which eventually led to me becoming a certified personal trainer. That's off to the side. But it really wasn't until many years later, probably halfway into my corporate career, where I had a chance to manage people and help people grow and develop. And that became very satisfying for me and got a lot of personal satisfaction. Every time I saw somebody succeed and achieve their goals, knowing I had a little bit of part of that felt really good. And I started to think about, hey, someday I would love to do this full time and be a life coach. In fact, I've had a couple people over the years tell me you should be a life coach. But so it's something that's been in the back of my mind for quite some time, but it wasn't until recently that I had the time to really devote to it and give it the energy to become certified. And I'm really excited about where I am right now.
That's amazing, Stephen. And do you mind telling us, when you decided to become a coach, why did the choice lie within Jay Shetty Certification School and not with any other training school?
Sure. Great question. So I take things very seriously. So, and you know me by now, Medina, I'm a pretty analytical person. And I ask a lot of questions. I'm pretty curious. So I did a lot of research for a lot of different schools. And Jay Shetty resonated with me for a lot of reasons. But the one thing that really stuck with me was the way Jay Shetty and the school defines coaching. It's pretty consistent the way I've worked with people in the past. So some of the schools out there, to me, it's more consulting, where they give advice or they tell people what to do. That's really never been my approach when working with people. I've used the expression, you maybe have heard me say it, if I give a man a fish, I feed him for a day. If I teach somebody how to fish, I feed them for a lifetime. And to me, that's where true growth and learning happens. And to me, that's where the Jay Shetty School comes into play. It's a process where you work with people and help them find what's important to them and help them decide what steps to take. And that's where I think people really get the greatest benefit. So to me, that's true coaching. And when I did my research, that really resonated with me with Jay Shetty. So at that point, it was a no-brainer for me. I love the school and it was a tremendous experience.
Thank you so much, Stephen. We really appreciate your feedback. And allow me to say you was also an extraordinary student, and we will never forget your presentation. That was really a really interesting experience. And I personally learned a lot from you during that presentation. But now, diving into what happened after graduation, would you tell us which clients do you work with? How do you usually work with them? What kind of results do you bring? Anything that you'd like to share about that?
Sure. So I want to focus on my niche. What I loved about the Jay Shetty program, the methodology and philosophy really can work for anybody, regardless of their needs. It could be relationships or social, health and fitness. But given my background, my niche is really focused on career growth. And you had mentioned that earlier. As one wise person I was working with, said to me, I think from a career perspective, I'd categorize clients in probably three categories. One is I need a job now. Two is I want to change, right? What I'm doing today, I'm not as passionate about anymore. I really want to look to do something new. And the third one is probably where I spend a lot of my corporate experience, and where I've helped people the most, is I want to elevate, right? People around me are getting promoted. How do I get to the next level? So I think those are the challenges in within my career growth niche. And it's been really interesting working with clients so far, because each of those clients would take a very different path and a different journey, to identify what's important to them, even though it's all well within the career growth space, I would say.
Fantastic. And even becoming a coach, looking now, at where you were and where you are today, do you think becoming a coach have changed you as a person?
Yeah. So I gained a lot of learnings from the schools in terms of my coach, and I expected that. What I didn't expect was the personal growth that I went through. And I'm just shocked that a lot of people have come up to me and asked me about my experience, even some friends and family. I can tell you that just going through the Jay Shetty training helped me tremendously from a self-awareness perspective. Folks may have heard of emotional intelligence, but I am much more in tune with, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? And I think self-awareness is just so important for everybody. And going through the training program has made me so much more self-aware in so many aspects of my life. And what's important about that is, as things are happening around me, I can put things in perspective and say, okay, here's the appropriate way to respond. Let me think about this objectively. So it has helped me from a personal growth perspective, but I can also tell you that the people around me have noticed the difference. And in fact, I've seen some people around me change a little bit too, based on my learning. It's been a phenomenal experience.
So you are creating the ripple effect already, just even, by early graduation, you already created ripple effects of people around you. Congratulations.
Thank you. And it just happened. It wasn't even something that was intended. It's been amazing.
Thank you, Stephen. And looking right now at one of the most difficult challenges that the world is faced with after the effects of pandemic, and that is, unemployment. Right now, and the contribution that you can provide to people is so important right now, especially for those who were, furloughed, or who were let go, or the companies that had to shut down. What do you think will be the post-pandemic approach to finding a job after you've been left, in the dark?
Yeah, it's a tough environment, right? And so I think the career and the job world is certainly a challenge, but I think where coaches can come into play too is whether or not there's some other underlying issues, right? So people are struggling with, well, what's my meaning now? Where's my place? From a pure job perspective, I think where coaches can help people in this current environment is to look at everybody individually. I always believe in working directly with person's needs. It's not a one size fits all. So some people, it might be that opportunity to look at things a little bit different. I think part of the challenge today is the world has changed forever, right? So hopefully we'll get back to a more social environment, but it'll never be the same, right? We're all working remotely today. There's going to be new skill sets needed. So I think taking a fresh perspective around, well, what is it that somebody wants to do? What skills do they have? What is the new world going to require? I think trying to do that inventory and try to find a match for people to say, here's what I'm good at. Here's what the new needs are in this world. Now, what are the right steps to get there? That's the approach I would see going forward.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that's fantastic. And I think it's a new breath of fresh air looking at job search from the perspective of assessment and audit and awareness.
Right.
Now, I remember from your exam presentation that you have a unique framework that you use in order to take people through a transformation. And I remember you telling us about your method and coaching approach, which was very interesting. Now, if someone from the audience, for example, wants to get in touch with you and get career coaching, would you explain to us how that process would look like?
Sure. So it is a very formal framework and a very structured approach. But the way I take people through it, it's a conversation, right? I'm a naturally curious person. and I really like to get to know people. I can tell you I've worked with some clients who've come to me with one particular challenge. They have something in mind, but as we talk through, and a specific example, somebody came to me with a career need or what they thought was a career need. But as we talked a little bit more, they realized that there was an underlying root cause that was causing some career challenges. There was some self-esteem and self-confidence issues, which, by the way, didn't only spill over to the career, but posed challenges in other aspects of the person's life. So the methodology that I go through is really a questioning approach to how to get to know somebody, what's really important to them, what do they think they're good at, what are their strengths. But it's my ability to ask those probing questions, pick up on some of the nuances. But at the end of the day, it's all about the client. It's about the client realizing what does it mean to them, what's important to them, what resonates with them. And as a coach, it's up to me to make those connections so people realize that it's them going down the path and them deciding. And it's through this very guided approach, which, again, behind the scenes is very structured, but up front, it's more conversational. Which I think has been great because I've been able to develop very trusting relationships with people, and it's been very good on both sides.
Beautiful explanation. I love that it's structured in the background, and then it's resulting in a natural and genuine conversation. Mm-hmm. And so I think it is time to tell our audience, before we take their questions, how can they get in touch with you? And if they want to work with you, where should they go?
Sure. So the name of my company is actually Achieve Coaching and Consulting. My website is achievecc.org. You can email me at steven@achievecc.org. I am on social media developing some presence right now. It's still a little bit early on, but if you go to either Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, it's Achieve with Steven Toss. And I'd love to hear from people. I love meeting new people. I love everybody's experience. I would love to hear from folks.
I would definitely follow you, Steve. Thank you for sharing. And so let's go through the questions from our audience and also address some of those that were submitted just before our interview. The first question is from our frequent viewer, Yuvarajan. Yuvarajan is asking, in your opinion, what is the best way to help a person who got stuck or stagnant in their career?
That's a great question. I think we've probably all found ourselves in that position. So thank you. And I'm sure that this question is going to benefit a lot of people there. So I like doing a little bit of digging, find out, what have you liked to do? What have you done so far? What has worked and what hasn't worked? And to me, I like approaching things from a whole new perspective. I start with a clean slate. I challenge people to say, well, what haven't you tried? What are others doing around you? What I also like to do is I challenge people to say, what is your boss doing? What is your supervisor doing? People sometimes fall in a rut. I've been doing the same thing over and over again, and I'm getting nowhere. So we've probably heard the expression, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I would take people through a process to do things a little bit differently. And we would do it in very small incremental steps, so it doesn't seem like a big leap. And slowly people will start taking on new things, and it generally works getting out of that rut. Great question.
And fantastic answer. Thank you so much, Stephen, for being so generous with your expertise. The next question is from your fellow student from the certification school, and this is Donna. Donna is asking, how important do you think it is to have an active lifestyle to support your mental well-being, and how do you incorporate that in your sessions?
Excellent. So great question, Donna. So I'm a firm believer in the holistic approach. In fact, if you folks get in touch with me, you'll see Achieve is actually an acronym, and the H stands for holistic, because I do believe having a well-rounded and balanced approach in all aspects of your life is really important. So I think active lifestyle is good. I think everybody has to be mentally equipped for change. It's critical to being open to new approaches, to getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. And I work that into all of my sessions. In fact, there's a process in the beginning where we kind of take inventory of all aspects of your life. As I said earlier, sometimes people will come to you and they think they have a challenge, but I don't necessarily want to assume that. So we have a really nice dialogue in the beginning to see if there's other aspects. And that's how we make sure that all aspects of somebody's life is really well balanced.
Fantastic answer again. And next question is from Alina. Alina is asking, when and how did you decide on your niche?
No, that's a great question. I've had so many people come up to me and ask me, look, I've been in the corporate world for 30 years and I've had, some success working with people. It's been fun. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. To me, it was just a natural choice to stay within career growth and build on that. So I think my 30 years of experience of working with people and helping people grow from a career perspective, now with my Jay Shetty training, is a tremendous combination. And I think I can help a lot more people from that career growth perspective going forward. So it's a great question. For me, it was a pretty easy decision.
Wonderful answer, and I love your news again. Now, next question is from Kavita, and Kavita is asking, how do you decide on career advancement when you have 2 kids, aged 2 and 3, and parents getting older and definitely have necessity to work part-time?
Yeah, good question. It's balance, right? And so I've worked with people like that. I am not a firm believer on quantity. I think it's quality. So I don't believe people have to work X number of hours, 50, 60 hours, to get promoted, to elevate in your career. I've always been a firm believer of working smarter, and I've challenged people to do that. And it goes back to something I said earlier. People who continue to do the same thing over and over again. I've been able to challenge people to think a little bit differently, to catch themselves, right? That's the hardest thing to do, is when you're doing the same thing, you're so close to it. How do you pause and take a look at things a little bit differently? So I think balance is really important between the parents and the children. Family is so critical. There's no question about it. But I don't think one has to sacrifice to the other. I think if people are working smarter and thinking more creatively and doing things a little bit differently, you can still have that balance and certainly grow and elevate in your career.
Fantastic. I also agree about balance. That's a really good point. And next question is from one of our frequent viewers as well, Share Trust Gumi Divi Pundi. How to make poor children to give priority to education rather than a job?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So each situation is different. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So depending on the child's need. I mean, I'm a firm believer in education. Certainly, a job is important, right? Because you have to put food on the table and you have to earn a living. I do think balance comes into play, but I also think understanding everybody's individual circumstance is really important. So I think again, it comes down to balance. I don't think there's one right answer for that. So I think if there's somebody who, has to work, then they have to put food on the table and they have to earn a living, but that, there still may be some opportunity for education. I also think depending on the type of job they choose, that there's learning through that. I'm a huge believer in on-the-job learning, and even though I'm educated and I've gone to school, I've gone to college, I can tell you a lot of my learning has been, from doing, not just education. So I'm not sure if I answered that question to your satisfaction. It's a tough one, but I think it's striking the right balance, and I think everybody's individual situation has to be looked at.
Absolutely agree with you, and I think you provided another great answer. Now, another question is from Krista, and Krista is asking, how does a severe introvert break that wall between isolation and fulfillment in life?
I love this question, and the reason I love this question is people don't believe it, but I'm a strong introvert. So for those of you who've taken Myers-Briggs or haven't taken the Myers-Briggs, it's on a scale of 1 to 30. I've taken that many times in my career, and I'm in the high 20s from an introvert perspective. I've worked with salespeople. I've done presentations to people. Here I am in front of you folks. It's took me a long time to be able to break out of my comfort zone and do what I felt was necessary to be able to do things that most people feel only an extrovert can happen. But being an introvert also means after I do this Facebook show, I'm going to go back and I'm going to recharge, because that's what introverts do, right? You know, they'll work with people. You got to break out of your comfort zone, because that's what you have to do your job or interact with certain people. So I think going back and recharging, having time for yourself and reflecting is really important. So that's how I manage it as an introvert. But it took a while. And I think small steps, a little bit more out of the comfort zone each time, will help anybody who's a very strong introvert get there. I know it because I lived it.
I agree with you that introverts need to recharge. And this is something that I wish we were more educated about, you know, being myself an introvert in past and then somehow transitioning on the opposite side. I know how important it is to recharge. Now, interesting question came from Denise, and Denise is asking, how do you overcome hearing negativity and sometimes harsh words or statements in a group of people you are a part of?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? And especially in this world, we see it with children and bullying, and it certainly doesn't stop as we get to adulthood. Look, you're your own person, right? There's an expression, people only can control your feelings if you let them do that. And I know it's easier said than done, it really is. But I think if you're a person who is doing the right thing, have confidence in yourself, know that you're doing the right thing, and even harmful words can hurt. We know that, but I think believing in yourself and feeling strong about yourself, knowing that you can't control other people's negativity, that's one way to approach it. It hurts sometimes if people who are close to you, people who you care about, have those negative words. But again, I think it really comes from, you know, inner strength, having that confidence and the self-esteem to say, look, I know I'm doing the right thing. And I can't control the negativity that's around me, but I can control how it makes me feel. And that goes back to some of the learning I mentioned earlier that I got myself out of the Jay Shetty program. It's that feeling of emotion. So when that happens, say, well, why am I feeling like that? Did I do something wrong? Or is it somebody else's negativity? And then when you realize that, you say, I'm not going to let it make me feel that way.
I love that, controlling your own voice and controlling your own emotions, gaining that, you know, power over your responses. I think that's a fantastic tip. Steve, I have an interesting question, and this is more of, a request for an advice, I think, from Rafiu. Rafiu says, I dream to be a footballer, world best player, but I have no sponsorship, no connection. How can I move on without relying on someone?
It's a great question. Look, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I was pretty good, but I didn't practice enough. So what I would say is continue to practice. You're going to need that skill, whether you have backing or not, and then put yourself in a position to get exposure. Right. So if you're playing and if you're playing maybe in a game where there's high exposure, or you put yourself in a venue where you're going to get noticed, stand out. Right. Take advantage of those opportunities. So practice, right. Build that skill, and then try to find a position where you're going to get noticed and rise to the occasion. And I know you will, because you care about that and you're asking these types of questions. So I think build your skill on one side, find the opportunities for exposure where people maybe will come to you.
You are very motivated. I can understand why your clients are so much value, because your answers, right now to the questions are very motivational. So thank you so much for those amazing answers. And Madhuri is asking a question which I think will be a great follow-up on the previous one. I would like to know, says Madhuri, how to stay focused on our dreams and what steps should we take to achieve them?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I love this because it's where do I start, right? So Stephen Covey, for those of you, Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. I'm a big Stephen Covey fan, and I'll quote him. So once you decide what's really important to you, and once you decide what your dreams are, then it's literally staying focused, and it's regularly checking in. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with clients or people in the corporate world around, well, let's do this. And I said, well, okay, let's pause for a second. Does that align with our dreams? So I think, Midori, if you continuously keep what your dream in mind is, put it a poster on your wall, have it as a stick note on your computer, something that will remind you regularly, and then just challenge yourself on a regular basis. Look at the things that you're doing and say, is that aligned with my goal? Is that keeping me on track? And for those things that are not aligned with your goal, to the extent you can, pause, stop them. And for those things that are directly aligned with you achieving those goals, you continue to do those and do more. I think having it in front of you, a regular reflection as to what is your dream, is the first place to start. And then along the way, as you're doing things, just keep doing that double check, and that'll force you to stay focused, and you'll get your dreams. You'll get there.
An amazing advice, fantastic advice. And I am wondering if you are going to have an amazing advice for Kristen, because Kristen has a tough situation. She says, my husband and I are going through a lot of financial difficulty right now, debt, underwater on our house, etc. We both work full time with decent pay. We also only have one child and drive old cars. Where would you suggest we start to get back on track?
Yeah, this is a tough one. So thank you for the question, Kristen, and best of luck, to you and your husband. I'd say, and I worked with a couple. Actually, I worked with a young couple who was in a similar situation. We literally laid it out on paper, right? What money is coming in? What money do they have? What are their expenses? And they would say, okay, well, what are the priorities? What are things we absolutely have to have, right? You have to pay the mortgage, or you have to feed the children. And then maybe some of the other things were less of a priority. So I think if you can lay it all out and identify what do you absolutely have to have today, and what could maybe take a back seat, which is not as much of a priority. And then hopefully things will start picking up in the job arena, and the money will start coming back in. I think if you just literally lay it all out and prioritize and then stay focused, right? That's going to be the key. Once you have that priority, if you could stay focused on that, I think that's the best approach. And obviously anything you could do on the job front to start bringing the money in will clearly help. But I think putting it all out there and then keeping a focused priority is the way to go.
Love that advice. Keeping a focus is the most important when we are trying to find a solution. And Samuel is asking you, how can one build his or her inner strengths?
Great question. And by the way, I love the Superman logo. I'm a huge Superman fan. So what do you do well, right? I think taking a step back, feeling good about yourself, feeling proud about yourself, really try to identify, what are those things that you really do well. One of the things I've talked to people in the corporate world about as I've developed them is there's too many people who talk about strengths and weaknesses, and I don't even like the word weakness. To me, I call it areas for development. And most of the time, people are focused on their areas for development. And I think where people should be focusing, well, what are your strengths? What are your strengths to build on? So I say, Samuel, really, take inventory, identify, be proud of yourself and identify what is it that you really, really do well. Continue to focus on that, right? Always remind yourself what you do well and continue to leverage that. Find something you really like to do, whether it's professional or personal, hobbies, things of that nature that leverage your strength. And what that's going to do is continue to make you feel better about yourself. You're going to continue to get better at those things and you feel even better about yourself. And I think that your inner strength and your confidence, that will just naturally build from there.
Another amazing point. And here is a question from Debs for you. What do you do in order to check in? Is there a process that you follow?
Yeah, so there are a lot of processes people can do. A lot of my clients have, some have done some formal journaling and reflection. Others haven't, but have started to do that. What I love to do is like at the end of the night to say, okay, what do I want to do tomorrow? And I think it helps me check in on today's, what I've accomplished today, and it helps me focus on tomorrow. So there's one client I'm working on, and she's just had tremendous growth, and she's never done this before. She's only 22 years old, and she's coming into a new career. for teaching in this COVID world, which has been a lot of challenges. So every day she has her goals. At the end of the night, she turns around and says, "Did I achieve my goals? Was it a good day, a great day, a not so good day, and why? And then what am I going to do tomorrow?" And so I think if you can build it into your daily routine, and it doesn't have to be at night, but I say building it into your daily routine where it's become a habit, you won't even have to think about it anymore. You'll just naturally do it. And I think it's a way to reflect on a regular basis and focus going forward.
So it's like an assessment, right? You can go through the things you have achieved, and then you can check whether the goals were met. And if they were not met, you can ask yourself why.
Yeah. And I think that why part is really important. Look, people have rough days. There are distractions, things are happening. And I try to tell people, you're going to have those rough days. Try not to have 2 in a row. Get back on track as quick as you can. So I do think that's really important to understand the why. Just say, it wasn't a good day. Maybe tomorrow will be. Well, what could I have done better? What am I going to do better tomorrow?
That's beautiful. And Alina is asking you, what is next for you, Stephen? Will you work on a book or maybe a podcast?
So I'm working with a social media. I'll call him a guru. He's a really interesting person. So we're talking about doing some podcast interviews. I love the idea of a book. I started an idea of a book probably 20 years ago, and I do hope to get to it someday. I picture it as a little pamphlet book. It's called the Little Book for Big Success. And I have a lot of content that I've got to pull together someday, but that's not what's next. So what I really want to do is I really want to get maybe some podcasts going. I really want to get my social media presence open. So again, a little bit of a plug. Achieve with Stephen Toss on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I really want to hear from people. I really want to engage people. And I really want to work with more people, because I think the more I'm working with people, the more experience I'll be able to get, the more success I'll be able to leverage. So I will, I'll stay tuned. I'm excited to see what's next as well. Thank you.
And as you can see, our followers are excited to read your book. You already have the first fans over here. And Donna has another question for you. What was your memory of your first coaching session?
So one of my first formal coaching sessions, and it was one of the things I loved about the Jay Shetty program is they have supervised coaching sessions. So you actually coach people, you record them, you send them into a supervisor. And Bill, who was my supervisor, he was tremendous, and he gave me some great feedback. So I think my first coaching session was with somebody I knew, and that was also part of the feedback. Try to find somebody you don't know. It was slow. It was really tough getting the person to engage. And it was, even though I asked a lot of open-ended questions to try to get the person to talk more, I was getting one-word answers. So it was actually a rough experience, but that was one of my best learning experiences. So just a rule of thumb, right? When things go great, we probably learn a little bit less. And I know we want things to go good, but I think when times are tough and we don't do as good as we want, those are the times we learn the most. And I can tell you those sessions were the greatest learning for me based on the feedback. And now I'll do things a little bit differently from, if I have a client who's doing a little bit less talking. So great question. It wasn't a success story from the beginning.
Well, I think that we all want to know now, Stephen, where do you see yourself in 3 years? What's your vision?
My vision is doing this full time. I really do. I really want to build up my client base. I would like to get a bit of a following. I really want to engage people. That's why I entered this field in the first place. And that's why I picked the niche that I want. I want to be able to have these conversations all day long on a full-time basis, something I love and I'm passionate about. So I'm hoping 3 years from now that I have my a client base and people are referring me. I really would love to get away from formal marketing. I'd love word of mouth to do the promotion for me, because that really tells me that I've helped people. If people are saying, go to Steve or talk to Steve, then to me, that's the best indication that I've actually helped people. So I'm hoping that I've developed a bit of a reputation, not for me, but really for people that I've helped, and that people are talking about me saying, wow, this guy can really help you. So that's what I'm aspiring to.
We believe that to reach there, Steve, because you are so inspiring, you are so motivated, and your answers to today's question prove how, experienced you are, but also how wise you are. So I have this question from Javon, and it's so long that it's going to cover our faces for a minute. I'm still going to read it. I'm learning the balance between going after goals and passions, but allowing myself to be motivated by natural inspiration, not forcing actions. I am enjoying life by living it in the moment via inspired acts, yet sometimes fear that I may not be taking enough action towards my goals. Any advice on how to align the no pressure approach and taking consistent action so I'm not losing momentum? It's important to me to do what I love, enjoy it every moment, yet I understand the need to stay cons.
Yeah. So by the way, that's a phenomenal question. So if you were my client, I'd be sitting down and say, well, let's talk about what your goals are, what your dreams are. And you'd be sharing with me the question that you just shared. So, but I'm a spontaneous person. I like to live in the moment. And I say, that might be one of your goals. They don't have to conflict. The one thing I would say is, as you're doing things in the moment, spontaneous, I would do a quick check-in and say, is that something that would conflict with your goals? And if it's not, then do it. You don't have to be focused on your goal 24 hours, 7 days a week. You do want to stay focused on that. You don't want to lose that focus. It's okay to be spontaneous, but if you're constantly living in the moment, then you'd lose sight of those goals. So I guess I would say, always check in. It's okay to do things spontaneously. And if that's what you're passionate about, that could be a goal in and of itself, but you could also have, some longer term aspirational goals that you're striving to. So I think it's a little bit of a balance, but don't think that your spontaneous approaches, by the way, is in contradiction to your goal. I think it could actually supplement your goal.
Great answer, Steve. And one question from me personally, I'm really interested about your perspective on this. Why, as human beings, if we're even invested in personal development and we have mastered, control and focus, why do we set so many goals and we do not achieve, 100% of the goals we set? What do you think are the barriers on our way?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think sometimes people do set too many goals, and when you set too many goals, then you spread yourself thin, and you can't focus on everything. So I think people should have 2-3 goals tops at once. I probably would focus on really 1 or 2, depending on how aspirational and achievable those goals are from a timeline standpoint, and it's focus, right? I think people expect too much in the beginning. I think people try too much, and at times may set themselves up for failure because I think they have higher aspirations that maybe are not realistic. So I think if people have a couple of goals, don't spread themselves too thin. If they take baby steps every day and just have a natural progression, what I have seen with clients is small steps will continue to keep the motivation and will continue to keep you aligned with achieving your goal. And people are less likely to give up on their goals when they see the progress. So I think if people go from 0 to 100, it's a huge step, and it may not be realistic, and they get disappointed, and they say, oh, well, maybe I'll go do something else. So I think focus is really important. Small goals, small steps, continued progress, continued motivation is a formula.
Beautiful. And Ricky, one of our graduates, also agrees with you by saying, spread too thin, nothing within. I also agree with that. Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, Ricky. Absolutely.
Ellis has a question which is actually about your ability to balance things, Steve. And Ellis is asking, how have you balanced getting through certification school and still having a full-time job, family, and life, all of it?
It was a crazy time. I still do have a full-time job, and I did have to work in the training, and it was a robust training. There were programs I looked at there was one program I could get certified in 3 days. Basically, you pay a fee, you check a couple of boxes, and I know I would have learned nothing. So there really was a robust training. It was something that I put my mind to. And I challenged myself. I said, look, the next several weeks, or really a couple of months, it's going to be busy. I talked to my family and I said, look, this is important. My family was very supportive. I said, so I'm going to be a bit crazy between my day job and really focusing on the school. I think it's going to be worth it for everybody. And my wife was tremendous. She was very supportive. She knew this is a dream of mine. So it was something that I understood upfront. I was realistic about what the time commitment was. I set very specific goals. The training was very regimented. There were many modules, a number of elements. I literally had a schedule of how many elements I was going to get through, how many modules on what days, and I stuck to that schedule on top of the day job. So it was tough for a while, but I identified it up front. I developed a plan, and I was motivated enough to stick to the plan. But excellent question.
I absolutely agree, because a lot of our students, they are working full-time jobs or now returning to the full-time jobs after being, work from home during the lockdown and pandemic. And so, the question always comes up how to balance, how to make sure I go along with our completion goals and at the same time, I do the full-time job. So I think your advice is absolutely fantastic. Now, Stephen, before we are going to say goodbye to our listeners, I have only one last question from Mel. We're going to take this one last question. And Mel is asking, how can I approach people to start a coaching session? I have people I know, they want help in their lives, but what words should I use?
So what I like to ask them is, how I would start with, how would you rate your life overall in terms of the different aspects of your life? And then, if you were to look at any one of those on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you are right now? I would go through a process where they would do a little bit of an audit, and they would check to say, well, where do I want to be? Where am I today? And say, well, what haven't you done yet? If you could wave your magic wand and be something different in 6 months, what would it look like? What would it feel like? And it gets people to think about, I would like to be here in my career, or I would like to, be here in my health and fitness. And I think that opens up an opportunity to say, okay, well, what haven't you tried, and what can you try? Have you thought about, just to really get a dialogue going? But I think getting people to recognize that they may not be where they are or where they want to be is the first test, because they have to recognize the need. Okay.
Fantastic. Start with auditing, helping people understand where they are versus where they will be. Well, I hope this answer helps. Well, Steve, I want to thank you for your time and all the fantastic answers. I also want to remind our audience that to get in touch with Steve, make sure you visit his website, or you tune into one of his social media platform profiles, or simply visit our website and contact Steve through our website. He has a profile there now. Steve, it was such a pleasure, and this session has been so insightful, so inspiring, and so motivating. I hope we get to do this again, and we are wishing you all the best with your coaching. You are definitely a very inspiring and motivational career coach.
Thank you so much, Medina, and thank you for all out there. Some great questions and a lot of congratulations and good lucks popped up. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody's support. Obviously, I couldn't do any of this without all of you. So I'm excited, and hopefully I get to meet some of you.
I am sure you will. Thank you for your time, Steve. You have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Do not forget to tune in next week, as we are going to have another interview with the Jay Shetty Certification School graduate. Let's make this a tradition. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.